guys, and welcome back to our channel. Today we are here with Jade Laird, who is a certified pharmacy technician. We're going to talk to her about her background in pharmacy, which has been a couple years now, right, Jade? Almost 3 years. Very exciting. Yes. Thank you so much for being here today. We're excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So let's jump right in. So Jade, you and I go back a little bit. I met you. You were a student at the Excel Center. So tell me about your time at the Excel Center, kind of what you experienced there, and what made you decide to take this course.
So I started in 2019, pre-COVID, so things were a little different, I'm sure. I'm not really familiar on how things are now, but I went to the Anderson location and they have a completely new building. They've completely revamped everything and I'm so excited for everybody there. I have a daughter, she's 7 now, but at the time she was 4, and I was taking a dual credit class with Miss Cindy, and I was kind of getting a little discouraged because I thought I could only do the dual credits. I thought it was either or, I could either pick a certification or dual credits. And she was like, no, we actually had a student. She brought her, I think you just had your son at the time. Your youngest son was only going there at the time. And she was like, well, we had one of our students, and she's actually teaching now. She's teaching farm tech. And I was like, okay, well, how do I get signed up to do that? And she got me in touch with, it was Miss Miriam at the time, was the director over there. So she was like, yeah, you'll love her. We'll sign you up. And I started the next term, and initially, kind of nervous to start something new, and it's such a big deal. I had already had the dual credit, so I wasn't necessarily worried about failing for that, but I need to get this done. I had just, started living on my own. Me and my daughter, we moved to a different state, and I needed it. There was no failing for me, like I couldn't fail. And so yeah, I'm sure it's different now in the 3 years, like you said. But
so I feel like I just want to stop right there and say 2 things. First of all, we both graduated from the Anderson Excel Center, which is really cool. And I know Miriam's no longer the director there, but she is so awesome. And then also, I think what you said about like there was no failing for you, that's really the attitude you came in with. You killed that class. You were like front row, all about it, encouraging your classmates, but really, really focused during the course. And I think that that really served you well. And I think that goes to show I think that you've obviously taken that with you throughout the last 3 years and really made something of this career. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you obviously took the course. We said that. What was your experience with KLR Pharmacy Technician Training School? And definitely give it to me, like give it to them, like totally honestly, because it's so different now, right? Like tell them everything, because we're in person.
So initially I had to, leave, I had to do school, do the Excel Center, leave, drop off my daughter, come back, and then do the farm tech school for, I think it was 3 hours twice a week.
Yeah, I think we did 3 hours. I think it was like a 5 to 8. I want to say is what we did.
So I want to say that, and we had a break in between, but it was you standing up there, and you were doing Zoom, I think with Noblesville and maybe Bloomington at the time, and you'd have to stop and kind of pause to make sure that they were still on there, and just going through the slides one after the other, and we're highlighting. You guys are going to want to highlight this. This is big information. This will be on your test. And so, and trying to get all that done. And it was very, very fast paced, but there wasn't a lot of time in class to dwell over like a specific topic, like, well, why would they do that like that? That's kind of weird. That's really interesting. But there wasn't a lot of time for that, but that you always took the time when we were doing our work, that if we ever did have any questions, you would always be like, well, this is because of this. Okay, yes, you need to go play with the puppies in another room, please. Thank you so much.
Mom life.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fine. But yeah, so there wasn't a lot of time, because you're not only teaching this class, it was also you're teaching this class and this class and that class. So, but you always did take the time that if anybody, even like the Bloomington, you'd stand at the computer and be like, well, this is why. But yeah, so, and always, if there's any questions, like with the class work in and of itself, like on how, like the math stuff worked and all of that, um, I know for me personally, if I ever had a question, it was always answered. And if I didn't understand it the first way, you'd be like, okay, well, think about it like this, you know? So yeah.
Definitely. So I think it's crazy how different it is. So did we do Google Classroom with your class?
Yeah, we did Google
It was
Classroom.
my first time using Google Classroom. We still use that, but I remember like your guys' classwork was even on paper. So like there were so many things that were still on paper. And there's none of that now. It's just so crazy how like things have changed over the last 3 years and kind of how differently. I wish you could come back and retake the course and be like, oh wow, that's so different. But I'm just so glad that you enjoyed the course. So not right after, but a couple months after graduation, you landed your first job. Where was that at?
So my first job was, and then also I would have taken the test sooner and gotten everything, but due to COVID, I lost my ID was stolen, and they took several months to send me a new one. It was a nightmare. But I got my certification in June, at the very end of June, and I started like 2 or 3 weeks later in July after I was certified. So at first I was working at a Muncie Walmart in retail pharmacy.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So I started working in retail initially, and I liked it. I think there's two different sides to pharmacy. There's the retail and the clinical, and a lot of people like that one-on-one aspect of retail. They like having, Mr. So and so that comes in every 90 days to pick up, medication A, B, C, D, E, and F, and G.
Yeah.
So, there's some people that really like that. And I really did like working at Walmart, but they didn't offer a full-time position to me. So with that, being a single mom, I had to look for, something that was gonna be more stable. So then I applied at Riverview, and yeah, and I worked there. Yes. And I worked there, and so I worked there. I started right before we got right before the vaccine had started.
Yeah.
Vaccine was not a thing. It was still in testing and all of that. And then it got cleared. So at Riverview, it was the first place in all of Hamilton County that had it. So I was thrown to the wolves. We were making all of these fusion antibodies, and we're, having to make fentanyl drips, and we're having to reconstitute the COVID vaccine. It was a madhouse initially, but it's not like that anymore.
Yes. And I think that so obviously for those of you who are listening, if you know me at all, you know that I worked at Riverview for years and years, loved my position there. It was one of the highlights of my career. Jade, I think I actually scheduled your interview and then I was gone before you even interviewed.
Yeah.
So I left to obviously run KLR full time. So you jumped in with Amanda and Michelle, who became the new supervisors. They're awesome. I love them both. And I know that, things were crazy when I left, just so crazy with COVID and the vaccine. And I know that right after I left, you guys really jumped into that whole vaccine thing. And I'm sure it was just mad busy for months and months. And so you are actually not still at Riverview, correct? Where are you at now?
I'm currently at Community Health in Anderson.
That's awesome. And your position is certified pharmacy technician,
Yes.
and you're in the inpatient pharmacy?
Yes.
Awesome. Um, what, so give us a rundown of what your day looks like in that position. Or
So
you can even talk about what your day at Riverview looked like, since I know you've only been at community for a few weeks.
yeah, so at Riverview, I I was trained in chemotherapy, IV. I was trained in how to, use the Epic program that most hospitals use now. Omnicell, I was cross-trained in inpatient and outpatient, so I was still doing a little bit of retail work at Westfield. I was making allergy serums there as well, so that was kind of cool. But so there's so just day to day, in the IV room, you walk in and you go to the computer and you print your labels and you have, a big old long list of what you're making for these patients, whether it's an antibiotic or and most mainly antibiotics, there's vitamins and all of those. But so you're literally like, while these people are in there, like they're depending on you to, whether they know it or not, they're depending on you to get in there, get your job done, get these medicines for them that they need to get better so they can go home to their families. And a lot of people, before I started, working in pharmacy, I didn't realize that, I didn't realize that my bag of Pitocin when I was in delivery with my daughter, I didn't realize that that was being made into pharmacy by
Yep.
somebody.
I
I
know. I
didn't,
feel the same way. I feel like a lot of people don't realize how much pharmacy actually does.
yeah, and all of that, the epidurals, everything, So I didn't realize that, but there's so much that goes into it, and you really have to be on your toes, and you have to be so organized, and you have to really have a passion for it, because if you don't, then there's some errors that can be made and that affects patient care. So you really have to want to do a good job, and you have to want to be there.
Absolutely. Do you remember the assignment we did in class? We did 2 interviews yesterday and actually asked the same question. They were brand new technicians, so they obviously remembered it. But do you remember the assignment we did in class about Emily's Law?
So what?
Emily's Law, where it
I don't
talks
think
about the sterile compounding and the mistakes that can be made.
I don't think was that in our class.
Yeah, I believe we did it. We didn't do it back then, but that is something that we do now that I talk a lot about, because it's something that I put into the curriculum because it has nothing to do with the national exam, right? Like, but it's so
Mhm.
important because, like you're saying, like, especially when you're compounding sterile products and in the IV room or the chemo room, like you can really make a serious error. And it's just so important to, like you said, have a passion for it and be compassionate for other people. And I think that's such a good point. Would you
Mhm.
say that being in the IV room is your favorite position?
Yes. Well, when I was doing chemo, I think chemo is my favorite, but I really like being in the IV room and mixing stuff up. We're able to play music at community, and I think as long as it wasn't like through a streaming thing, we could review as well.
Yep.
So just being able to go in there, and especially being a mom, having that time to myself to play music, to do my own thing, and not be interrupted, and
In
just
your
kind of
own little box where you can organize and control everything for 8 hours.
just zone out and just do, zone out and like tune into what you're doing and just not. I love that, just the peace that comes with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember I enjoyed really being in the chemo room and the IV room. So I totally get that. What things, Jade, did you learn in class? I know it was a long time ago, so you're gonna have to think really hard. We're getting old. What things did you learn in class that you feel like you use most often as a pharmacy technician?
So, calculating dosages. So like the math that I learned, and when I worked retail, you use that so much, like if it's this many days supply, or if they're supplying this amount and it's supposed to be for this many days, how many you're supposed to take, and vice
Yeah.
versa. All of that, I feel like you really did a good job of making sure that basically like any problem that would have been thrown our way, we had a little bit of experience, with that. And then also, calculating, because, Epic and the programs that we use, they do a really good job of making it really easy and error proof, but there's still those times where you'll get this medication and it will just say, like 300 milligrams and it's a 500 milligram dose or for the vial. And you're just like, okay, I have to do some math now. I have to take a step back.
Yes. And that can, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're in a hurry, or if you're worried about making a mistake, that can really be like nerve wracking, I feel like.
Yeah. And also SIG codes, especially working in retail.
Yes, SIG codes are a big one, definitely. So Jade, what advice, you have been working as a certified pharmacy technician for over 3 years now, what advice would you give to new students taking this course, or students who have just finished this course and they're getting ready to go into the pharmacy field themselves?
So for, especially with taking the course, all I can say is like study. That's all I did for the entire time, is just study. And I retake the tests and just familiarize myself with all of the things, but also with people going into pharmacy in general, just ask questions. If you don't know something, ask questions. Nobody's gonna make you feel a certain kind of way for not knowing something, especially being new into pharmacy in general, but at a new place. I've been really lucky with everywhere that I've worked. All my coworkers have just been so kind and helpful, and just, I don't know, like I said, be careful, be organized. Organization is a really big thing in pharmacy.
Yes.
And my organization isn't going to be the same way that you do it, and it's not going to be the same way as the next person. But you'll find your own niche and you'll find your own group. And once you find that, though, like you're set, because day to day your position will change around, like what you're doing, but it's the same thing, same thing, same meds, same, this and that.
Yes.
But so
yes,
it'll
a little bit different here and there, but for the most part, you really get used to seeing the same things over and over again, and you feel pretty confident and comfortable with those, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Jade. I appreciate you taking your time out of your evening, especially to do this. I know that the current and past and future students will really appreciate it. And it's great to see, just a different version of what hospital pharmacy or, pharmacy in general looks like. So we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.